We are on the second day of live questioning of the undercover police officer, Jim Boyling, who used the cover name Jim Sutton to infiltrate animal rights and environmental groups, including Reclaim the Streets. He deceived 3 women into intimate relationships, one of whom he had 2 children with. This morning's questioning immediately followed on from what we heard at the end of the day yesterday, with questioning around his deceptive sexual relationship with Monica. I'm joined by Evelyn Lubbers from the Undercover Research Group. I think it's fair to say that that's some of the most disgusting and disturbing, appalling testimony that we've heard throughout the entire inquiry has happened over the last hour and a half. Jim Boyling has shown an absolute disregard to the concept of consent and has come out with some absolutely outrageous statements about his treatment of both Monica and also Ruth, the second woman he deceived.
He doesn't seem to have any thoughts about, like he just had relationships with women because he liked them. And no matter how often Bar asks him, like, what about consent? What about your moral obligations? What about the fact that you're in fact a policeman? He keeps insisting that he was like, he was living this existential existence to the max.
Yeah.
And he said that on the first day, and Bar keeps posting that back to him, in fact, because it's so much, it tells you so much about the way he thought and he just saw himself as an activist. He has like totally nonsense declarations about everybody in an activist group can only sleep with another activist. It wasn't possible to have relationships with other people. So he was kind of, there is this bit like as if he was forced to, which includes that fact. Well, he's very like, like they made the first step. As if he couldn't do anything about it. It was like putting the blame with them, in fact. And that's not even the worst. I don't know, like.
I mean, there were so many things. I mean, this idea, just to finish with this idea of him being lost in the identity. He did point out yesterday that during much of this time, he was not just going to the twice weekly meetings in the safe house with the SDS. He was going every single day because he was doing so much action. He had so many things to report. Yeah. So he was having meetings with his handlers, with his managers, with fellow undercover officers every day. Yeah, he's also saying that he was completely lost in his identity as an undercover officer, as the activist. It doesn't really add up. So many offensive things. I mean, particularly we heard ones where, I mean, it was put to him it was morally wrong. He disagreed. He disagreed that there was anything morally wrong about deceiving a woman into a sexual relationship. He denied the fact that he had not given Ruth the opportunity to have informed consent. Yeah. I mean, just so many sort of.
I wrote some of what he said down because I was afraid I would forget it. He, at a certain point, he said, nobody thinks they're the bad guy, do they? Oh, yeah. And then he said that, given the fact that I'm here, I might be wrong there. And everybody was like, oh my God, that is a first confession that you are a bastard. He also told some really, really amazing things that not only him, but other undercovers would try to edit down their reporting if it would involve So he said, I try to edit down your reporting to what the outcome would be. And what he meant by that is that if, like at a certain point, they would have information, but didn't give it to the local police because they thought it wouldn't be fair to let that people go down for what he had done so hard. So it's like, it goes against everything they claim that the SDS was for, like collecting intelligence and warning the police or helping the police with getting the perpetrators. They sort of, that's what someone called, like he's got like idea of himself, like they were the people to decide who was going to go down or not, and who and he was also very sort of evasive about whether he told, or not evasive. He didn't tell his managers or.
Yeah, that bit was very strange because he said that lots of his other fellow undercover officers knew, and he was asked to name them, and he just couldn't do that. And it was very clear that he knew exactly who he was talking about, but he couldn't name them. He admitted that he told his mentor, a HN1, cover named Matt Rayner, who we heard from during the last tranche. Last tranche. Then he was being pushed on this. He remembered, of course, he could name the whistleblower because that man was outside the tent. So he may name Peter Francis as someone who knew. He then said that other people in his field, but not all of them, knew. He really ran around this. One of the things that he did keep doing was he kept giving out. There were a number of restriction orders today, and I can't talk about what those restriction orders are actually about. But I can say that Jim Boyling was kept revealing personal private information of members of the public during his testimony. I think he was doing this on purpose, so some of the worst elements of what he said weren't broadcast on the YouTube feed. So if you have been watching and you've missed bits out and you're a bit surprised about us being so appalled by the things he said, some of the most appalling things were said around. It was almost like he said something appalling and then thought, shit, I should name someone so that I know this won't be broadcast.
Yeah, he said that he withheld reporting about a GM action coordinator because, apparently, and then we were almost thinking like maybe he didn't report about his role, his own role in it, but then he was asked to write down the name of this person and he did.
We also heard about the way in which private corporations, so he was told, was it intelligence being passed on to private organizations? I mean, he said that it wasn't, and then he said, well, it was above his pay grade if it was, but he said something that he was aware of was the fact that private corporations like Shell and the big city companies, like as in the City of London, would employ private investigators, take the intelligence they got from the private investigators, then take that to the SDS and ask them to basically mark the homework. Is this true? And he says that him personally would go through and go like, oh yeah, this isn't true, this is true.
This is such an important thing to have, like, written, sort of into the evidence. It was in the context of Shell AGM that he was reporting on, and then he was asked, like, was any of that you knew there was going to be an action? Did you that get through to Shell? And that's when he said what you just said. And as a matter of fact, we know that Shell employed loads of investigators, private investigators, to find out what activists were doing. So it's very implausible that there wasn't any further contact. The fact that there was contact the other way sort of tells you something new. We didn't know this in advance. And then we also went on to the McDonald's. He made some kind of snide joke, comment, source comment, as it's called. He reported on the reinstallation of London Greenpeace after the McLibel trial, and then he says it's likely that it's going to be the same people in that group, just without the private investigators, which. Barr then asked, "What did he know about that?" Because, and he claims that it was in the paper, and
it was in Private Eye. It was cartoons in Private Eye.
Yeah. So that's like, that's why people knew about it. But
he did also say that it was known that it was said that Helen Steele had met more SDS field officers than anybody else.
Yeah, and
I think David Barr is doing a particularly good job. He is once again. I mean, I always refrain from like complimenting Barr too much because I know many of the people who come on these broadcasts do, and I'm like, well, he's just doing his job. But one of the things he's doing is he's asking about the personal private, the deceptive sexual relationships, and which I would say Jim Boyling is getting very angry about answering. Very angry. The mask is slipping. He is arguing with David Barr, and then David Barr will switch to a report and say, oh, about this report, what was your reporting beforehand? What was around it? And you can see Jim Boyling trying to shift his mood into like, oh, right, I must answer this properly and truthfully because there's a paper trail around this. And then going back to the relationships again and Boyling really not being able to cope, very discombobulated.
He is really, really getting really angry. It's like, well, if you have a report about it, I suppose it's true. I suppose I knew. And it's like, and then he also returned like he did yesterday to answer, to question, to put questions to Barr. It's like, I don't know.
I mean,
He's,
there was a
yeah.
few moments where it was like when he was being asked about his reporting on Monica, he said, "Oh, he was very careful about reporting on her because to make sure there was nothing negative for her. I suppose you're going to bring up a report now that shows that I didn't."
Yeah, so
He was just like
he's
so
such a,
annoyed.
like, yeah. And also, and then he said, like, he was asked, like, so if you at a certain point he was shown surveillance photos of the group, and he named several people, but he didn't name Monica. And he explained that he wasn't asked about that because the general rule within the SDS, don't ask questions, don't ask, so the managers wouldn't ask questions if they didn't want to hear the answers. So that sort of shows that what the atmosphere was, like you take care of your own stuff, you don't bring complicated issues to the managers, because then things have to be done. And so this was like sort of the way relationships, for instance, were allowed. And he also said at a certain point that about 50% of undercovers that he knew of had relationships.
Yeah, about half. It's about half
Yeah.
in the lifestyle, by which he means anarchists, animal rights, people who kind of.
Yeah, because of course, like within the extreme right, it was much more simple to be a single man, because there were plenty of single men there.
But anyway, so somebody's left a comment. Post your buy a coffee link, bro. I will do it. It's in my profile. It's ko-fi.com/Tom B. Fowler. If anybody wants to support this work, it'd be really appreciated. It's only a short break. We have to go back in fairly soon. It's only a 15-minute break. It really is worth following because of the breaches, the restriction order breaches. We understand it might be difficult to follow, but we really recommend doing so. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off? Please share these videos. It makes a huge difference to how visible they are. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you again at lunchtime where we'll do a longer recap. Thanks for now.